My next guest has over 10 years experience on the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement. Senator Sandra Pappas now joins me in the studio to offer her perspective on the health of Minnesota's public pension plans. Welcome.
Thank you.
The recent sky is falling news from Bloomberg said in late August that Minnesota's pension plans are funded at 53% of what is needed for future obligations, down from 80% last year. They also said that pension funding ratios have declined in 43 states. How dire is the pension funding situation in Minnesota?
The sky is not falling. I don't know why the Bloomberg article made it sound like that. We've known about these, it's called the GASB standards. It's just a different accounting system. And simply put, instead of using what our real interest rate has been over the past 5, 10, 20, 30 years, which has been between 7.5% and 9%, depending on what span of time you're looking at, they assumed that we would be using government bonds, which are very low interest rates. And so then they took the average of what our real interest rate is and what the government bond rate is, which is about 1.5%, and our percentage of about 8%, and they averaged that out. So then everyone looks less funded. That's all it is, and it's a snapshot in time.
And of course, there's no way to really know what the future returns will be. So is this perhaps a better way of looking at the picture?
I think it makes it look more, it just makes it look more serious than it is. And the problem with that is if you say we have to pump a lot more money into our pension systems, then current employees may be paying more than their fair share. Or if you say we have to drastically cut our retirement benefits by cutting the cost of living, then you're really not being fair to the retirees. So it is a balancing act, and we're always looking at it and making more changes. But really nothing on the ground has changed.
Okay, well, the pension committee met recently. What needs to be done? What did you learn? How quickly does it need to be done?
Well, we certainly learned that we should have passed the last 2 pension bills and the governor should have signed them. And we passed them, but the governor vetoed them. And I can't blame the governor totally. There was some lack of communication, and there were some things the governor said, if you put this poison pill in with the pension bill, I've already promised I'm going to veto this, local interference provision. The leadership should not have mixed the 2 issues. So that's a problem. We do need to act this year because we do need to make changes. About every 5 or 6 years, we need to make readjustment. We have 2 things that are happening. One is the demographics, is that women in particular are living longer, so that raises our future pension costs.
And Minnesota is actually number 2 in the nation for longevity, I read.
That's right.
Yes.
So that's the good news and the bad news, depending what job you're in. And the other issue is what people sometimes call the new normal, is that perhaps in the future we shouldn't be so optimistic about what our interest rate is going to be. It has been around 8.5%. So we do need to lower that assumption to 7.5%. And that should take care of it.
And so that's my next question. The legislation last session, had it been passed, would have lowered the investment return assumption to 7.5%, which is about a 1% reduction. Is that a big enough reduction, or do you think maybe 7% just to be safe?
I think that's a big enough reduction for now. Doesn't mean we don't look again in 5 years to see if that's still the correct assumption. But what that means, though, is because it does make our plans look less funded, that then we need to raise contribution rates by employees and raise contribution rates by employers. And we do need to cut back on the cost of living increase for retirees. I call it the shared pain proposal.
Okay. You referred to this just a minute ago, this wave of people that are going into retirement. Will the pension fund be able to handle all of these baby boomers as they transition into this next phase of their life? And then after they're through, the generations that follow, can this be handled?
Yeah, the actuaries take that into account. That's why we're making the changes now, because of the demographics of more people retiring and more people being retired and living longer. That's all taken into account in the calculations by very smart people. I couldn't do it. And then they figure out how much we need in order to make sure that we're moving toward full funding. We're on an upward trajectory. Right now we're on a even or downward trajectory with our major pension funds. So we need to be on an upward so that we can say in 30 years we would be fully funded. Think of it, Shannon, like buying a house, right? You don't, the bank's not going to tell you you have to pay off your mortgage tomorrow. We're not going to do that. You pay interest and you pay on the principal, and you'll pay off your mortgage in 20 years or in 30 years. That's what it is. Our pension funds have to make sure that we'll be able to pay off our mortgages in 20 or 30 years, depending on, you can pick a different number.
In your view, what is the right percentage that these future obligations should be funded? Like last year it was at 80%, this year, according to Bloomberg, it's 53%. But should it be fully funded, or is 80% a comfortable area to really be able to guarantee those obligations into the future?
All the funds need to be on the path to 100% funding. That we don't necessarily need to make it to 100% funding. The problem with 100% funding, it's happened in the past, we've been 110% funded, is then the demand is intensified about reducing money going into the pension fund by the employers, the school districts or the state government or local government, and giving better benefits to employees, and maybe increasing the COLA. So everybody wants to get a bigger piece of the pie or have to pay less. If that's the case. And that can harm us down the road, because the stock market could take a downward turn, we could go into a recession, and all of a sudden we don't have enough money. So it's better to be safe and to be cautious in that sense. And you know, if we get to be 80 to 90% funded, I'm happy with that.
A philosophical question for you. Is the idea of defined benefit plans archaic and in need of phasing out, or is it something that should be around for the long term, especially for public employees?
It's the best retirement plan. It's in a sense like Social Security. You're going to get it. You're going to get the money, regardless of what happens, regardless of what the stock market does. You know, if you have an individual IRA, you could, right before you retire, the stock market could take a drop and you lose all your retirement funds. It's not very guaranteed. That's why they tell people when you're close to retirement, you need to put your money into safer, like bonds or the bank account or whatever, and not have it in the stock market anymore. But with a defined benefit plan, it is there for you regardless. So it's the best plan. And we did look a few years ago, about 5 years ago, at going to defined contribution plans. The transitional costs are billions of dollars, because the defined benefit plan is really dependent on new money constantly coming into the system. Once you cut that off and you have a closed plan, then that's when your plans go broke.
Finally, you were recently a guest on Tom Weber's Minnesota Public Radio news program on the topic of pensions. Near the end, you projected a 50-50% chance that these pension issues will get resolved in the next session. What's preventing action?
Well, I think it's political. I think in the past, the Pension Commission has been bipartisan, and we've agreed on what needs to be done, and we need to do the right thing for our public employees. And for some reason, the House leadership has decided that tying pension funds with other issues that they want to get passed is a good strategy. And the governor has his priorities. He has like 5 or 6 issues that are his priorities ahead of pensions. It's just not his priority. It's the right thing to do. And his commissioner will tell, a budget management commissioner will tell him that in terms of our bond rating, we need to make sure our pensions are funded, and it's the right thing to do for our government employees. But we shouldn't be playing politics with it, and that's my concern. And if that continues, that's why I said there's a 50-50 chance, because if the playing politics continues, if for some reason we don't have enough money, because it does cost quite a bit, we need to give the school districts money, state government needs to have money, and next year we may need to help out local governments as well when PERA comes in for a fix on their plan. So I'd like to get back to the situation in the Pension Commission where we agreed that we had to spend this money, and we had bipartisan consensus to do it.
Senator Pappas, I want to thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for great questions, Shannon.